In your seatbelts. Tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast as we head into the Easter holiday weekend, and we're going to take a look at what that brings. We'll look ahead to next week and see what next week brings, and we'll talk about what the Easter Bunny's going to be bringing. And that's all coming up right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast. And use the coupon code WINTER2324. Because if you do, you will get.
You'll get 10% off.
And good evening, Mr. Rayo.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you. All the better for your asking. How are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Wonderful.
I just apologize. I'm not really apologize, but I do want to tell all of our viewers, and they are faithful viewers, that we'll have only one more week of this in terms of shifting of our normal schedule. My last library or civic group talk virtually is coming our way next week on April the 4th. That is the last one. And after that, everything should revert back to a normal 7:35 p.m. schedule once again. Thankfully, we don't have a Friday night show because I don't know what we would do. Tomorrow night, I'm doing a talk for a group, an Airstream travel trailer group in Colorado. And my talk does not begin until 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time or 8 o'clock Eastern Time, which would mean that if we were going to do it after the show tomorrow, after my talk tomorrow night, we wouldn't go on the air until 9:30. I don't think we would do that anyway. But anyway, a few more days of this. We'll get the eclipse out of the way, and then it's back to normal as far as the Joe and Joe schedule is concerned.
And we should mention, by the way, that your Eclipse show the other night got rave reviews.
Oh, really?
Yes, Clive Barnes of the New York Post called it an astronomical marvel.
Oh, God, that's a nice.
Variety said it was a show for the stars.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, what are you going to do when the rent comes due?
Oh,
Rufus
yeah.
Johnson Brown.
Nice. Welcome to everybody tonight on the chat board, and welcome to those of you who are lurking in the background here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We are
Why
you
don't you
are you
Why don't you tell? It says on somebody on the uh, on the chat board said, well, oh, it was Tyler Fenga said Joe Chiaffi's in a very good mood. Why don't you tell him why you're in a
all
very
right?
good
Let me
mood?
hold, all right, I will. Let me finish. Let me finish this.
Okay.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is usually on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. with Fridays and Saturdays off. But as Joe mentioned, we've been doing a lot of schedule shifting around because, well, Joe is in such high demand from the astronomical world. So there's that. So as Joe said, a few more adjustments next week, and then after that, things should get back to normal. Hit the like button if you like the show because we love it when you get over 100 likes. And we will be off Sunday, Easter Sunday. So after tonight, our next show will be on Monday. And Brandon Doherty, the first to hit the tip jar, thank you.
Thank
He says, your talk was fantastic. I'm an SS teacher of 25, a social studies teacher for 25 years. And I loved when you talked about Stonehenge. Happy Easter to you both. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And you say I'm in high demand. I'm going to do one of the very rare in-person talks at a library, at my local library here in Putnam Valley, which is only about 2 miles from my house. And guess who got wind of it through a press release that the Putnam Valley Library sent out to the news media?
Am I going? Is this someone that you're happy about that got wind of it?
Oh yeah, well, it's a local TV personality,
A
and in fact,
lo a
I'll
local TV personality. How local? New York City local?
yes, New York City. He was a Joe and Joe guest a few years ago.
Well, what was it? Was it? Dare I say, with shirt sleeves rolled up, Lonnie Quinn?
It's Lonnie Quinn.
Well, Lonnie and I are very close.
the interesting thing, and I just found this out from Lonnie, is that on Eclipse Day, CBS, not network, but CBS local, Channel 2, is devoting 2 hours of coverage to the eclipse. And Lonnie was asking me, he said, is there any way that maybe I could get you or entice you to be with me in Rochester, New York? That's where he's going to cover the eclipse, the total phase of the eclipse. And I told Lonnie, I said, look, I'm not going to be in Rochester. I'll be in other spots probably for the total eclipse path. And, oh, darn it, Joe, I wish you could be part of our show and everything. And then came the news
Hmm.
release from the library saying Joe Rayo is going to do a talk. This was actually for the kids. These are for kids 5 years old and up. We're calling it an eclipse workshop for kids on building projection boxes and ways to safely look at the eclipse. The library has ordered 500 solar glasses that they're going to distribute to kids who are coming. And when Lonnie got wind of that, he said, "Holy mackerel, Joe, we got to go and cover this, and then I can pull you over and we can do all the discussion about it." So Lonnie's coming on Monday. I didn't expect it, but he'll be here. And
Joe, please show up with a long sleeve shirt. Just roll the sleeves up when please, please. And I say this jokingly because Lonnie's a very nice guy. He actually, he has relatives in Helen,
down there in
Georgia, which
Georgia.
is very close to me.
Yeah,
Um, and he said, one of these years when he gets down here, he was going to let me know. Which,
just think,
of
just
course, I
think.
haven't heard from him. But that's that's
Well,
how it works.
if the eclipse were going to happen over northern Georgia, I'm sure you would have heard from him. But and in fact, even I can't accommodate him. He's going to Rochester. I may end up in Syracuse or Plattsburgh, for God's sake. By the way, I was planning to go. I had made hotel reservations in Dallas, Texas, and Little Rock, Arkansas. Those are probably going to go completely by the wayside, whether or not the weather it looks good down there or whatever. But the problem is that thanks to good old American capitalism,
Yeah, it's
uh,
like $1,000 a night or whatever it is.
well, I mean, the normally a flight from here to Dallas would be about $350. Now it's not only like $900 to go down to Dallas, but now I found out that if I wanted to go to Dallas, I'd have to fly out of Newark Airport, but I couldn't come back to Newark. I'd have to go back to JFK.
Oh, good God.
Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can believe it, actually.
But
Um, okay, so we are now 10 minutes into the show, which is great. Um, you might have noticed that there is no buffering going on, and you might have noticed that there's no, video jumping around, and the audio is fine. So, I think we all have had that experience where we've whatever it is, where we try to do a bunch of things to fix something yourself, and then after you're exasperated, you call somebody that comes in and like in 2 seconds just fixes everything up. Well,
yep,
it sort of happened to me last night. So the problem was, uh, what I did was I actually did a show last night at 9:30 to test it out, and it worked perfectly. So what happened was uh, I called my local provider, my broadband provider, and luckily I got someone who knew what I was talking about. Which generally, if you get somebody that's under the age of 35, they're going to know what you're talking about. So I told them about my broadcast software and everything else. So we went through all my settings and everything was fine on my end. So what he said, what we explained, which is what I had been suspicious of, was the fact that um, when when you stream, okay, when anybody streams and your information is going out there through the internet, it goes through various, nodes and cities and on its way back to wherever Google has its primary server. All right. So if your stream is going into, uh, say, via Atlanta, which is my stream, it would be going via Atlanta. Well, on YouTube, when you check on download detector, uh, you'll notice that and it's been like this for the last couple of weeks, that this, light shade of blue, the shading of blue indicating that YouTubers that are trying to stream in that area are having problems. And I noticed that that was particularly, in metro areas like Atlanta, Dallas, New York City, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Boston. And this is also a heavy traffic time to do live streams. Most people are, this is the prime time for it. So what he did was, which was a very simple fix, he changed the DNS settings. Okay, these are numbers that you put in, and it helps to route your traffic. Well, he changed my DNS settings to Google's DNS settings, so that my live stream now bypasses all of that and goes straight to YouTube with no, you know, it's not hitting traffic jams along the way, which is why I was having all those problems. So it should be done because now we're 12 minutes into here, and yeah, your web address, the DNS, right? So it was a simple matter for for the tech guy. He talked me through it. I changed the DNS numbers, and it's it's been perfect, and I'm in a good mood. Uh, yes, he changed the DNS, correct. He had me put Google's DNS in here. So it works. I don't, it's wonderful. I'm watching this. I use, for those of you who stream, if you're a gamer, if you stream, you might use OBS, the OBS streaming um, streaming service stuff that you can get on for free. It's a video encoder, and I can monitor everything that's going out. No dropped frames, zero dropped frames. Uh, 4200 KB PS and holding right there. So it's all good. So, and the best part is, you might have noticed I've been turning my head from side to side so I can look at myself on my second monitor to make sure that my head is turning cleanly, so I know that there's no video jumping and that what I'm saying matches my lips, which is even better. So
In other words,
anyway,
it's not like a Japanese movie, right?
right, it's all good. So, rumor has it that you had rain today. It's been heavier more to the east than to the west in the area. Uh, Coming down hard in Long Island. William Uber on the chat board said earlier that he had another 2 inches of rain on top of everything else he's gotten this month. Got to be some places, Joe, is approaching 10 inches of rain for the whole month by now.
Oh God, and I may be one of those places. I mean, we've had so much rain this month of March, and I picked up. Now I know we picked up at least a tenth of an inch before midnight last night. I don't have the exact number in front of me, and I looked a little while ago, and we had 0.40. So we've had at least a half an inch since we were together last night, and probably even a little bit more. And don't forget that last week we had what 2.63 inches of rain. And by the way, I've got to get together with Bill Goodman the next time he's on. Apparently, there's somebody else in Putnam Valley who apparently is a weather observer for this area, for the Putnam Valley area, cooperative observer, and a trained. That's how he's listed on these rain amount listings. Trained observer, trained cooperative observer. I had 2.63 inches. This chap reported an amount of like 1.99 inches at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was just about the time when the rain was ending in Putnam Valley. We had maybe another hour or two. And then when the final total came in, he somehow was on the list. I wasn't, he was reporting for Putnam Valley like 3.99 inches. And I said, wait a minute, how in the world could he have possibly had that much rain? 2 more inches of rain about the same time that the rain was tapering off and ending, as opposed to my 2.63. And meanwhile, everybody around us in Mahopac and in Yorktown Heights and other areas were reporting anywhere from 2.2 to 2.6. And this guy came in with like just under 4 inches of rain. So I got to ask Bill Goodman, what is the criteria for choosing? Is it just because he claims that he was a trained weather observer, a cooperative observer?
Well,
If he
I
was,
mean, is he? You're where are you? Like, are you in the west side of Putnam County?
yes.
Well,
But
maybe he's on the east side of Putnam
oh,
County.
no, this was Putnam Valley.
Oh, in Putnam Valley.
Right.
So
This was my
you're basically on the west side of the block, and he's on the east side of the block,
something like that. I
or
don't know.
or north or south or something. But he's close.
I ran
He
into this
might
a
even live next door.
that wouldn't that be funny? I ran into this a few times in my life. There was a cooperative observer, very highly regarded, down in the White Plains area, and during one big snowstorm, I think it was the storm gave you like 34 inches, Joe.
Right.
In the lower Hudson Valley, this gentleman, he has since passed away, was reporting 15, and yet after reporting that on the National Weather Service list once, he got removed, and somebody else from White Plains, somebody who was obviously not a trained observer, came in with like 26. And I said, "What are they? They looking for the highest number to put down on these forms, or they're just overlooking?" I don't know how it's done, but I was annoyed with the rainfall totals that were given last week. That for me, my representative total I think was pretty darn close, the 2.63, and nowhere near the 3.99 that this other guy was reporting. Especially since, like I said, uh, he reported 1.99 at 5 o'clock when the heavy rain and precip was tapering off rapidly. I said, how the hell did he pick up 2 more inches in the time frame from then till the end of the storm event? I don't know.
Yeah. My quarter house in Maine, where I'm not, I'm just curious, Mike, where you are in Maine. 10.12 inches of rain, of precip so far this month. That's a lot. And more coming with what's coming up the coast now. 8.90, Rich Rothmansky says Kennedy's rainfall totals, and they're not done yet with this particular event. Jason Schaefer, he's had, where he is in Nassau County on Long Island, 9.18
God,
inches of rain. So it's been an incredibly wet month. These rain events have all been big and widespread too. It's not like, in the summertime you get these huge variations with rainfall amounts because of thunderstorm activity and the nature of these small scale events. Some people get them, some people don't. But this has been, this has been pretty much area wide, and we've been kind of married to the flood watch, um, for much of this month. So what one thing that, well, I don't even want to say, because it doesn't necessarily mean that even though we're going into this blocking pattern next week, it may actually wind up making things worse, bringing more precip in. But we'll get to that momentarily. The watches and warnings map tonight is well, you still got flood watches up. I mean, all of most of Maine is under a flood watch, and southeastern New Hampshire, the eastern half of Massachusetts, down into Rhode Island, as this low moves up the coast. Then there's a big break between there and Southeast Virginia and eastern North Carolina, and this is one of those situations where the surface low, instead of, unlike last week, which moved, right up the coast to off the New Jersey coast south of Long Island. This low is actually moving east first. And we mentioned this the last couple of days that it was going to go more east first and then turn northward. And that's why the middle part did get precipitation, but you're not really getting a clobbering. Now, if you're in the eastern half of Long Island and points eastward, you'll argue that point with me because, as I said, William Uber pointing out that he's already had a couple of inches of rain there. Meanwhile, we've got in the west, we have winter storm warnings in the Sierra Nevadas. We've got flood watches up for much of Southern California, near the coast and a number of miles inland. Wind advisories in the southern part of California and along the coast and parts of Nevada, Utah, and northern Arizona. We've got a little area here in southeast Kansas and southwest Missouri under a wind advisory. We've got a few winter weather advisories up in northwest Colorado, as well as western Wyoming and up into north central Utah. And on the satellite loop, you can kind of see here, this was a frontal boundary, Joe, and it just basically, it's like a train on a railroad track, and it's just building moisture up and just shooting it northward up the east coast from Maryland and Delaware on at least right now from Maryland and Delaware on northward.
Absolutely. It is a stuck weather system, and we're going to be playing the game of splits and blocks over the next 7 days. We have a system that is going to be affecting significantly the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast next week, sometime between the 2nd and 4th of April. And that system is going to move slowly through the northeastern part of the country, intensify slowly but surely. And as it does, it's also going to slow the weather systems across the United States. So that, you say that and you say, so, well, what does that mean? That's actually maybe here in this part of the country, the eastern part of the country, good news. Joe, I've been watching the ensemble uh, forecast in particular, and now the operational forecasts are also beginning to come into play, showing, as a result of that next system next week, a big ridge of high pressure expanding like the proverbial balloon over the Atlantic seaboard for the end of next week into the start of the following week. And of course, the start of the following week, the 8th of April, is the solar eclipse. So I think with guarded optimism, the weather is looking promising, at least in the eastern part of the country for the eclipse. Another thing that I noticed from the Climate Prediction Center on their 8 to 14 day outlook, they actually carve out an area of below normal precipitation. You talk about the way it's been in New England and the Northeast these last few days, and maybe even on into part of next week. But for the time frame from, I believe, the 5th to the 11th of April, they've got much of eastern New York and New England in brown, below normal precipitation. And that bodes well for not much in the way of precip. And also, when you see the brown, you usually also associate that with fewer clouds. So I think if we can put up with one more atmosphere, to use as Chiaffi term, one more atmospheric atrocity, which may come through between the 2nd and 4th of April of next week, after that, it looks like things are going to be changing, at least for the better and for the drier in the mid Atlantic and northeastern section of the country for the end of next week and on into the following week.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, we can only hope and pray.
Yep.
If you're paying $1,000 a night for a hotel room to see an eclipse, it better be clear. You know. Speaking of which, to the west, across western Pennsylvania, western New York, and points westward, all the way back to the Rockies, it is, with just a few minor exceptions, with some little wisps of clouds moving across the northern Ohio Valley. Weather's pretty nice. And, it would kind of lead you to think that we've got a lot of dry air coming in and things should be okay for the weekend. And unfortunately, because we're going to have a northwest flow, we're going to have, and we've got all this energy out in the west that you see, a lot of clouds that have rolled into the western part of the United States. And in fact, there's a very impressive rotation sitting off the coast of Washington and Oregon. So that's the next storm system in the west. Some of that energy is going to get pulled, it's going to shoot eastward into that northwest flow. And unfortunately, we're going to have a couple of these little disturbances going through over the weekend. Nothing that completely washes out anything, but there will be some minor inconveniences for some, uh, both late Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening, and then maybe again late Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening, from what I saw. But the rest of the time, it should be okay. But in the meantime, down here in the south, it was a beautiful day today, and I got to 68, which was really nice. And we had sunshine with a gusty north wind, not a screaming wind like we had for 2.5 days earlier this week, but it it wasn't enough of a wind to keep me from my walk, which I did. I did my 5 miles today, so I'm feeling really good and in a good mood, as you pointed out. Radar is, there's still some moderate to heavy rain. There's a patch off the Delaware and New Jersey coast in the darker blue that's coming into the coastal counties of New Jersey now. This is going to sort of skim coastal New Jersey. The eastward progress of this front and this developing low is rather slow. So it's taken a while for the back edge to move out. And meanwhile, a lot of this stuff that was forming earlier off New Jersey and Delaware uh, had has moved over eastern Long Island. It's just actually just about getting ready to move out. But we've got some heavy rains going on the eastern half of Long Island, and over the tip of eastern Long Island, there's probably some, you know, super duper heavy rain, that area of red there that's clipping the east end. Also into the eastern half of Connecticut and Rhode Island, into southeastern Massachusetts, and then of course that continues up into coastal Maine. You can see the radar's pretty loaded there. Ways to go for you folks in New England with this, particularly in southeastern and eastern New England. This is going to take much of the night for it to get out of the way. Got a few light showers in Illinois and Indiana. We've got a little bit of snow going on in northern Montana, some scattered snows to the south and also back to the west in parts of Idaho. And then on the west coast, we've got some rain showers in northern California and some heavier rain showers going in to the Pacific Northwest. WPC. So if we look at the 5-day forecast, takes us to 0Z Wednesday. So that takes us to Tuesday night. So let's look at the 3-day forecast. So on the 3-day forecast, what you see in the east, in the northeast, is what's going on now. So in eastern, southeastern New England, on top of whatever was already fallen, you're going to get another 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a quarter, inch and a half. Kind of touches Cape Cod. Maine, particularly the eastern half of the state, gets hit with 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain out of this, on top of whatever's already fallen. So you got a lot of water there. Nothing across the south for the next 3 days. In fact, I could see temperatures, they were going for near 80 in Atlanta Saturday and Sunday. So I'm thinking for me up here, that probably means 74 or 75, which is really good. Um, this is also picking up on the precip that's coming in from the west. And you'll notice, I mean, it really doesn't show very much. If you go west of New York City, you're talking about a couple of hundredths here with this. There's some heavier uh, half-inch to 3/4 inch amounts around northern Illinois into southern Michigan. Much of that's going to weaken before it moves. And then we jump to the 7-day rainfall. Now, here's where we start to get into a system for maybe the middle part of next week. Big rains in the northern Ohio Valley for the next 7 days in total. Some areas getting 2 to 3 inches or more. You can see what's going on in Maine. Eastern half of the state getting another 3 additional inches over the next 7 days. Southern California, several inches or more. They have, I mean, Joe, they've had so much rain, and of course, with all the snow that they had in California, you got to think that they could probably go when they get into their dry season. eh, There's no way that they're going to be in a drought situation in California for quite a while.
Right,
I mean,
right.
probably right through the rest of the calendar year, I would think.
I would agree. Well, you never know though, because they could have an exceptionally hot summer, which could rapidly serve to drain. But you're right. They've had so much since the opening bell of the wintertime that it would be hard, I think, hard pressed to get into even a modestly dry weather pattern by the middle or latter part of the summer. But we'll see. And but certainly they're getting into the spring and summer season in pretty good, not pretty good, very good shape as far as moisture is concerned.
Well, a lot of the rivers that have been dry for several years or longer, lakes that have been dry several years or longer are, you know, filled up with water now. So, and I was reading a couple of articles saying that, I forgot that one lake in Death Valley that filled up with water, and they think the water's, eventually the sun's going to eat all that up. But they intimated that it might take a while for that to happen. So it's just kind of interesting how they swing the pendulum over there from one side to the other. I'm going to change this up. I discovered these, I don't looked was playing with the website today at WPC, and this is a day-by-day probability of at least 4 inches of snow. The uh, the blue is 10 to 40, the green is 40 to 70, and anything in red is 70 plus. And this is going day by day. So from now till tomorrow evening, We're looking at high probabilities of at least 4 in northwestern Colorado and also relatively high probabilities up in northern North Dakota. You see an area also of higher probabilities of at least 4 in the Sierra Nevadas. If we go to day 2, which is Friday night into Saturday night, northern Maine, some low probability for 4 in the northern part of the state, also northern Minnesota, high probability in the Sierra Nevadas and up into north central Utah. Day 3, which is Sunday into Monday, it's all in the west, the Sierra Nevadas into Nevada, into Utah, western Wyoming. Obviously, it's not everywhere, but in the favored areas. And then you start to go into the long range here. Day 4, day 5, day 6, and on day 6, this is Tuesday into Wednesday. I know a lot of you talking about this system already for early next week. Um, up in the Adirondacks, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, starting to show some probability here on this map. The darker green is a 30 to 50% chance for at least 4. Okay, so oh no, I'm sorry. This is the day probability. It's just like the other long range maps. I guess that's how they do it here. 4 for the first 3 days, and then they go to the long range. So this would be, as I like to call it, at least a few inches, at least 2 or 3 inches on day 6 in the interior part of New England. And also on day 7, which would be Wednesday to Thursday, we're showing higher probabilities in northeastern New York and on up into Maine. No, they're not showing anything down near the coast. Okay. And I bring that up because I don't know if you saw this, but I have to bring this up. So the zero Z GFS run from not last night, but night before last.
Right?
Okay, so that would be the run Tuesday night. I don't know if you saw this, Joe. And this is for this
So, so-
weather system for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week.
right.
And I'm going to bring up the snow map because this was, and we see snow maps like this pretty much uh, all during the winter months. Okay, this is the wrong one. I clicked on the wrong one here. Let's see if that's the one.
Still
Yep.
looks some.
Well, okay. So I mean, we get maps something like this. You get these wild maps in the long range, and every once in a while they go crazy. This is probably the best one of the whole winter, Joe. So this was for the middle part of next week. It gave a couple of tenths to New York City and to Islip, 11.5 inches for Bridgeport, 12.5 for Poughkeepsie, 18 inches for Hartford, 24 inches, I'm rounding off, 24 inches for Norwich, Providence,
Look at
50,
Providence.
50.9. Did you take this? Now, how could anybody look at this and even remotely take it seriously? Okay, 50.9. Boston, 42.4.
God, it's
43.8 for Worcester, 53.5 for Lowell, Mass.
by the
You know,
way, it's the return of the blizzard of '78.
well, you know what? And the thing is, there was a part of me that would have loved to have seen something like this happen because considering how the winter was, to suddenly get an entire winter and in some cases a winter and a half worth of snow in one snowfall would have been hilarious. But I mean, come on. And then, and this I thought was worse. Okay. So I don't know if you saw this. This was the 18Z run of the NAM yesterday. And
Uh-huh.
and I have said off and on the last number of months with regards to the NAM of what a squirrely model it is. The 18Z run had from this system tonight changing over to snow on the backside. So look at this ridiculousness. And this was on the short range. Okay, this is the short range a day before the event. NAM. 5 inches of snow in Toms River, New Jersey. 4 in Long Branch. 3 in New York City. 5.1 in Brentwood, 11 in Norwich, 12 in Providence, 11 in Boston, and 15 in Worcester. And the thing was, Joe, this was the only, I mean, when the model run came out, I was like, oh my God, this is just ridiculous. There's no cold air. And so how it produced this is beyond me. But this was one of those instances where no model, it's not like there were a few models that were doing something. Nothing. No, none of them. So I don't know what kind of data got into the NAM yesterday for it to do what it did. Because on the very next run, it was virtually gone.
Hmm. What
Amazing, isn't it?
and the sad part about this is that there might be a few people who are just getting ready to leave college, get out of college, and they look for a job and they see something like this, and they'll actually believe it.
Jason Schaefer said the SREF had a few tenths. It was probably some renegade, one of the members of the SREF on the plumes probably gave like 30 inches and everybody else gave zero. So when you average out 26 models, it came out to like zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.3 or whatever it did. I
Yeah,
do want to show the other thing I wanted to show tonight was um, the uh, the state of the Pacific sea surface temperature anomalies. And one thing we're noticing is talking about the El Nino and the fact that we're going to a La Nina, you can see that you're beginning to get areas of below normal ocean water temperatures, and the El Nino has definitely weakened from what it was back just a couple of months ago, or even just a month ago. I mean, it's still there, but it's decaying very quickly. So we'll have to get to keep an eye on this. And I did see a new person on the chat board earlier. Let me see if his message is still on here. I hope it is because I want to address it because hurricane forecasts are already going out. Deshaun Stallings, thank you by the way, Deshaun. I hope you're still watching. Welcome to the channel. You're new to the chat board and saying about another hurricane hitting, the hurricane season. Do you think another hurricane might hit New York to Connecticut just like 2020 uh, because of the warm waters? What storm did we have in 2020?
I don't remember 2020. I
Yeah,
don't.
I don't remember one in 2020. Well, anyway, okay, so my answer to your question is, and thank you for the question, is the La Nina is going to mean that we're going to see probably a very active hurricane season. Although, if something weird were to happen where we didn't see one, it would not shock an active season. It wouldn't shock me because there's so much weird stuff going on weather-wise these days. But I would think that you're going to have an above normal year, and if it's as strong as some people are describing this La Nina to be, it could wind up being a very, very active year with a number of major hurricanes. But as far as specifics go, in terms of hitting certain areas, there's no way to know that. I mean, every year there's always risk, but to be and we've gotten pretty good at figuring out how active a season is going to be. But as far as the specifics as to what areas would be favored, are we going to have more Gulf of Mexico storms? Are we going to have more Atlantic storms? Are we going to have more Atlantic storms that move up the East Coast? Are we going to have more storms that make landfall versus staying out to sea? Those are things that we really can't answer at this point. But I think it's going to be an active year. And David Schwartz, thank you for hitting the tip jar super chat. He says the Gulf Stream has well below normal temperatures. And actually, if you look at this map, Joe, you can see that where the Gulf Stream is, which is very interesting because much of the Atlantic is still showing above normal temperatures. But we are seeing some pockets of cooling in the Southwest Atlantic and also in the North Central Atlantic. But where the Gulf Stream is, where normally you would see, you would stand out on most maps, even on the anomaly maps. Some, dark blue here, very below normal temperatures, a very weak Gulf Stream. that is running from North Carolina east northeast. I don't know what implications that has, but it's kind of interesting that we have a Gulf Stream that is not functioning the way it should.
Incidentally, you were asking about what systems we had in 2020, and shame on us because there were a couple of them. There was
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
trop, Tropical Storm Faye, July and around July the 10th, had peak intensity winds of about 60 miles an hour. Not necessarily in the New York area, but it did take a track very close to New York. And then, of course, the one that hit later in the season, which was the one that we had such trouble with in just pronouncing. It's Aias
Oh,
from July 30th to August 4th. And that
right.
was,
Okay. Yeah. You have to excuse us, Deshaun. We're both in our mid 60s, so we don't recall things
yeah,
as well as we used to,
right.
including what we had for dinner tonight. So, anyhow, let's look at what's going on with the upper air, and here we go. Uh,
Incidentally, Dr. Cohen posted a few hours ago saying models are now predicting a traditional tropospheric response to a polar vortex disruption of Greenland blocking next week, setting up the potential for heavy snow in the mountains of New England. Maybe time for ski industry to public retrain public to associate Easter rather than Christmas for ski holidays.
well, this is what he's talking about. I've just circled the blocking high that develops over Greenland in the Davis Strait for the first part of next week. And the result is a fairly wrapped up low, at least in the upper atmosphere, sitting off the New Jersey coast. So yeah, it may very well, turn out that way that we could see some big snows in interior northern New England. But you need it to be perfect to get it down to the coast, and that's not what we're seeing here. Joe, I think it's more of a problem of not so much where everything is synoptically, but just the fact that there's no cold air. I mean, no real cold air. The quality of the cold air is not it hasn't been very good all winter long, except for one stretch in December. And I think that you could probably say the same for what's going on now. We just have sort of, in Canada, you're not seeing, you didn't see big cold air masses sitting up in Canada with double digit below zero readings during the day, let alone at night. You really didn't see very much of that. In fact, Canada had, from what I was reading recently, was for much of Canada, it was and it might maybe for the whole country, it was the warmest winter on record for them. So,
Right.
you know, it's all fine and dandy to have everything going on synoptically when everything's great aloft, but if you don't have the low levels, if you don't have the low net levels cold, ain't going to happen. Well, the block is certainly there for next week. And then once that pulls out, we actually go to, a northwest flow toward the end of the week. So now we're at April 6th. And as you mentioned, there is some ridging here, but there's still this flow out of eastern Canada that goes down into New England. But at least, Joe, I would say, at least as far as the 8th, if this is correct, you're not going to see, if this, you'd rather see this than see a deep trough in the east someplace or a trough in the middle that's starting to bring, a low and rain and all the rest of it. This is something that you might have to just keep an eye on some minor disturbances of the northwest flow coming through. But you probably would rather deal with that than having to deal with some sort of big storm.
Yeah. Well, Joe, what can you say about late March into even April? We've said this time and time again over all these many years. Probably this is the hardest and most difficult time to forecast because there's so many crazy things that could happen and come together. And indeed, I mean, take case in point next week. Next week we might see a pattern where some folks in the Northeast, maybe not necessarily here in the New York area, but again, upstate or across portions of New England, may get hit with another major snowstorm. Need I remind everybody, we are just coming off a major snowstorm in upstate New York and central and northern New England this past weekend. Crazy. We waited all winter. It didn't happen. Now we're into the spring, and look at this. It's a pattern that suddenly is not just happening once, but happening more than once, a repetitive type of situation.
J Dog says Tonga changed the weather, maybe, and Tonga being the undersea volcanic eruption back in early 2022 that spewed all that water vapor into the stratosphere. And yeah, uh, I'm beginning to really believe more and more that it has changed a lot of things. Uh, maybe we could lay some of the blame of the active hurricane season last year on that, uh, because the El Nino should have negated some hurricane activity to some extent, and it didn't. We had the fourth active season on record, fourth most active hurricane season on record. So you got to wonder what it might mean for this year. What the implications are with the La Nina. Maybe it winds up being the reverse. I don't know.
And I,
Um,
I think I mentioned that Captain Bill Kirk over at Weather Trends 360, I mentioned this, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, made a comment on the Weather Trends 360 site about Tonga and said that it had injected something like I don't have the exact number, so pardon me, but I think it's pretty close. Something like 168 million gallons of water vapor into the atmosphere. And he says that all of that moisture could very well lead to a wetter than normal pattern across much of the globe, especially the northern hemisphere, for the next 3 to 7 years. So we may be seeing, at least for the next several years, similar numbers in terms of abnormally high amounts of precipitation. He also said that may also loan itself to the greenhouse effect, greenhouse gases, which could mean that we might be seeing lower than normal snowfall. So much higher than normal precip, but yet enough warming of the atmosphere because of this surge of moisture from the volcano to warm or heat temperatures up. This is especially the case the past 12 months with the combination of that and El Nino. So
yep. The world we live in. All right, the low pulls out in the west. You got this storm that drops down along the California coast, heavy mountain snows, coastal rains. Here's one of those disturbances we were talking about that moves from the upper Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes on Saturday. Uh, Brings maybe a couple of rain showers late Saturday afternoon and evening, and then that goes out. And then Sunday dayside starts dry, but then by Sunday evening, we've got clouds rolling in and maybe a couple of showers Sunday night into Monday morning as a new high tries to build. And of course, now we've got a storm coming out of Colorado. You see it there. And it gets all wrapped up nicely in northwest Kansas. So maybe some snows for Nebraska into southern Minnesota and Iowa and southern Wisconsin. That low moves eastward into the block and redevelops southeast of Cape Cod. And there you see it there popping up sometime Wednesday morning. And you got all this wrapped up snow and dark blue snow showing up in Maine. Now, a lot's going to depend on where the redevelopment takes place. One of the things that GFS model was doing with that big snow was the fact that it started out to redevelop a low, way south of what the models are doing now. It was much further south, and it had a low just southeast of Cape Cod. So that would explain why it had snow in those areas. And now the models have kind of pushed it more to the north. Uh, Interesting that all the models seem to have something of size for the middle of part of next week with regards to its developing storm system. But if it plays out, and you got that cold feature aloft with that deep upper low, you may not have any kind of quality cold air, but you'll have um, a lot of what I always call do it yourself cold air, where you have a strong upper low. And if you take a look here, we'll just bring up the upper air. That's a pretty wrapped up, deep upper low that's diving down into central Pennsylvania and goes off the New Jersey coast. And you know that might be enough to correct the low levels of the atmosphere with regards to snow for interior New England, I think.
well, we'll know. We'll certainly see. Again, once again, for those who are into the eclipse forecasts, and as I mentioned earlier in the show, this system next week is going to be important. It is going to be the one that is um, going to determine whether or not we are going to have a favorable weather pattern for the following week in terms of the visibility of the eclipse. So we'll see how this all pans out. Don't you love meteorology and weather forecast? It's like a domino effect. As I've been saying all along, you can't really look beyond 5 days because the system that's, let's say, on the map in the west, you're going to have to see how that plays out by the time it gets to your area. If it's stronger or if it overperforms, it's going to have a say in the weather beyond 5 days. And uh, the short and medium range model, the long range models too, the algorithms, they're just guessing. It's the computer's way of doing educated guesses as to what's going to happen in the long term. You have to wait for a specific system to move through, pass by, and finally develop into whatever it's going to develop into. Otherwise, if you're going to rely on, the guesswork of a long range model beyond 10 days, good luck to you.
So we're back up full screen, by the way, and 52 minutes into this broadcast, no issues, none. It's
Very
been,
good.
I mean, I hesitate to say it, but the problem is solved. I'm not a pessimist, but this sort of stuff has me on edge. It has had me on edge for the last number of weeks. And not being able to solve a problem is like this is a big, it's a big deal for me. Uh, so I'm glad I finally got to fix it because it's just frustrating. And then while the show is going on, I'm trying to, we're talking weather, and at the same time, I'm looking and seeing, oh my God, I got these technical problems I got to deal with. So it just took my mind off of where it should have been much of the time. But, so I'm glad that everything has worked out. And unfortunately, Mark, the commercial stuff I can't control. That's how YouTube, does it. Um, I usually, I noticed the other night, I don't want to say usually because that's the first time I've actually saw it was the other night that something comes up on my screen that says I could, shut the commercials off. Um, they didn't cut, that didn't come up tonight because I shut them off the other night. Trying to just, while Joe's show was on, because I didn't want anybody to get in, get commercial breaks in the middle of his presentation. But I didn't see it tonight. Yeah, they do. They're doing all sorts of things. They do stuff and then they tell you about it months from now.
If we weren't viable, they wouldn't have so many commercials interrupting our show. They know that people are watching and they say, "Hey, okay, let's stick another commercial in." And that's my viewpoint.
Well, you know what? I think I think it's valid. Um, Speaking of commercials, this is what I'm going to do right now. So for those of you who are still, maybe you haven't found any glasses, or if you go to your library and you can't find them, uh, I'm going to uh, put up at this point. Let me just get this is from Target. Okay, Target has a 2-pack of solar glasses. If you can't find them, for free. So if you look on the lower left, this little box will come up that says, I think it says shopping, ideas or whatever it says. So I just put up the solar glasses, 2-pack, and if you're into using your mobile device, I'll put this up also. This is called the Eclipse Smart. The first one is called just Solar Eclipse glasses, and it's a 2-pack. This one is called Eclipse Smart 2 times Power Viewers Solar Eclipse. No, this is not the one with the mobile. I get that was on here yesterday. I guess it must have sold out because I'm not seeing that. Um, oh, here's one. It's called Take Eclipse Pictures with Your Cell Phone Safely from Walmart. So I'll put that up as well. So you got two things to choose from if you like, and if you do purchase, thank you because it helps to pay the rent. I just wanted to. let
Yeah,
everybody know. So,
everybody, everybody's trying to get the eclipse glasses. In November of 1997, I had the great honor and privilege of writing a family values piece for Reader's Digest magazine. And it was about how my grandfather showed me an eclipse of the sun when I was 7 years old. And then he said, I'm going to take you to see your first total eclipse. And indeed, not 9 years later, he drove me and my grandmother, my mom, my sister, leisurely 900-mile trip up to the Gaspé Peninsula of Quebec for us to witness a total eclipse of the sun. And he did this because he saw in 1925, in January of 1925, there was a total eclipse of the sun over New York City. By the way, the next time that's going to happen will be in May of 2079. Take your vitamins, Joe, because I don't know if you're going to be around. And
you
I
have
don't know.
what? 27? You said 1979.
I said May, 2079.
2079.
Right.
Well, you know what? Let me check my calendar because I think I'm booked that day.
Now, the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is that when you have a story published in Reader's Digest, and this is not the case anymore. Reader's Digest, if you've been reading it and noticing, it's gotten significantly thinner and smaller. But back in the day, it was like in its peak years, which was 1997. It was being seen by 27 million people in 19 different languages. So when I wrote that story, I got a whole heck of a lot of feedback, most of it very favorable feedback from people who enjoyed the story, thought it was very, very nice. Again, it was a family values type story talking about how my grandfather drew me into science and astronomy and whatever. But the most interesting correspondence I got, and this still blows me away, was from a woman in North Dakota. And the woman said, and her name was Barbara M. Vargo, and she said, I was very touched by your story that you told about how your grandfather saw the eclipse in 1925 in New York. She said, incidentally, I was living in New York in 1925, and I remember seeing that eclipse. And I saw the eclipse with a special device, and I've had it all of these years, and now I think the time has come to part company with it, and I'm sending it to you because I know you'll make a good home out of it.
Oh,
And what she
nice.
and what she did was she sent me this. This is a little booklet talking about the eclipse of 1925, and attached to the booklet is an old piece of dark photographic film which you would use to watch the partial phases of the eclipse. As you can see here, I think you can see it. Uh, there's the date, January 25th, January 24th, 1925. This cost all of one thin dime back in 1925. I suppose today this probably would cost you what, um, $2 or $3 or something. But in any case, uh, this was sent to me, and I have held on to it all of these years. I got it again in 2016 or 20, no, excuse me, in 1997, and I've held on to it all these years. This is one of my most prized Eclipse tchotchke possessions. This old pair. Not this was for the eclipse that passed over New York in 25. This eclipse coming up will be the first New York State eclipse since 25. So these glasses are 99 years old.
Wow.
Maybe
That's amazing, isn't it?
these,
I have a question though. You
yeah,
said most you wrote you wrote how did you describe it? A family values piece?
right.
Okay. So you write this family values piece about your experience with your grandfather and what a positive experience. And you said most of the responses were positive. And I'm just kind of curious. Did you actually get negative responses for it?
I should have said all the responses. There
Okay,
was,
I was wondering because it's like, who would, what kind of person, that would be the question I would ask. What kind of person would find
oh,
something negative about that?
I'm so used to saying, it's rare when I say in a most definitive fashion all the responses. I'm so used to saying, well, most of,
Right, because there's, for most of the time. Yeah, and but you know what, Joe, I just asked that question because there were times where I've put up stuff and that it's mind-boggling to me that somebody could find something negative about it,
well, they do. They
you
do.
know. Which leads me to I want to ask deep probing questions about the misery that is their lives, but I never seldom get that
Things that
opportunity.
things that I used to say on radio or television or even Even in my planetarium talks at the Hayden
Yeah, you
Planetarium,
can't say anymore. I know.
30, 40 years ago, I got huge pops. People would applaud. People would laughing. Now, if I even mention that,
Oh, you'd be canceled. You'd never do anything again.
it's a sad society that we live in today. That's all I have to
It
say.
it is. So let's just switch off to another subject matter because I did put up my dinner menu for Sunday. Uh, for my because I'm having as Lucy told Ethel, a smart dinner party, and I'm wearing hostess pants. Um, so I'm making uh, I'm gonna try something new. With usually I just I might make pasta with some sauce, and I'd make my sauce on Saturday and meatballs and all the rest of it. But I decided to go a different route this time around, and I'm gonna make uh, pasta carbonara. And by the way, as I was doing my research on it, if you make carbonara, um, there and you want to make it authentic Italian, you do not use cream, okay? Because if you go to Italy when they make pasta carbonara, they do not use cream. So the cream thing is an American thing. And also with fettuccine Alfredo, the cream thing is an American thing. So I'm not doing that. So I'm making pasta carbonara, and I'm making also for the main, that's the opening course, and of course there will be hors d'oeuvres of prosciutto and the Spanish cheese that I really like, called Manchego cheese, which by the way you can get at Costco. Um, so my main course is I'm making a French cut standing pork roast and a leg of lamb. Okay. It's a small pork roast and a small leg of lamb, so everybody gets to try a little of both. My garlic roasted rosemary and sage potatoes, um, making broccoli di rab and mushrooms. And then today it popped into my head because I needed a bread. So, some kind of, bread thing. And I decided I'm going to make popovers. I don't know if you've ever had popovers.
I've had popovers, yeah.
Popovers I love popovers. I remember just going up and staying at bed and breakfasts up in New England and having popovers with my breakfast or with my dinner, or going to what was a big oh, what was that? The Milleridge Inn on Long Island.
Many times.
I used to go to the Milleridge Inn when we used to go there for dinner, and I would have, I always would get the same thing when I got there because their prime rib was always very good. So I would have that, and I would have the pop they have popovers, and I would devour. I would eat like half a dozen of them, just glob them with butter, and oh my God, they were so good. So I put it in my head that I'm going to make popovers from scratch. So uh, keep your fingers crossed for me.
I will. As far as I know, Sunday we're having prime rib here, so
Oh, nice.
I don't know
Very
what
good.
I don't know anything else. And my sister will come over. By the way, my sister still has not seen um, my grandson because my son and daughter-in-law will not let anybody come in close contact outside of the immediate family with him until probably the third month. They're that concerned.
That's what happens with the first child. Wait till they get to the second or third.
Well, we'll see.
No, by the time you get to the third one, I always joke about this because it
You're
really
out.
is true.
You're on your own, kid.
You're on your own, pretty much. Exactly. When you have the first one, you boil everything and everyone. I mean,
Right.
people come into your house, you have them step into the dishwasher, and you just put it on, and you run it for an hour. I mean, that's how obsessive first-time parents are. By the time you get to the third one, you just, you're giving the kid, you're gonna give your kid milk in a bottle, and you don't have any clean bottles. So what do? You reach into the dishwasher, you pull out a bottle that hasn't been washed yet, you turn it up to the light, you look at it, and you just go, I could sort of see through it. You give it a quick rinse of hot, with warm water, and you use it. I mean, it just, when you have your first kid, you're very protective, and you think they're going to break, And I'll tell you one thing that did happen with my daughter because we did the same thing. I mean, we were young. What do we know? But we did the same thing. And my daughter did not get a. I'm not kidding you. My oldest daughter did not get a cold so much as a sniffle until she was about 9 months old, when she finally, was, you know, sort of going out and being around other people. She had, at- she then had, I think it was 12, basically 12 or 13 colds in a row. She'd get a cold, she'd get over it for like a day or two, and then she'd get another cold. And then she'd get over it and then get another. And I think it was 12 or 13 over a span of uh, like 6 or 7 weeks that we were dealing with that. So, they got to get exposed to all that stuff. If they don't get sick now, they're only going to get sick, when it happens.
Yep.
But they'll learn. They all do it, and when the second one comes, they don't do it again.
All right. So here we are. It's 9:07 on September 24th. The Mets that clinched their first championship in 9:07 back in 1969 on September 24th. That's what every time I see 9:07, I think of that time or that date. Anyway, here we are, and that's
Do
it.
you have Briller Jeopardy?
Do I have Briller Jeopardy? I've not looked, but I can look now and see if I have Briller
Let me
Jeopardy.
see if I have it.
Yes, I do have Briller Jeopardy.
All right. Okay. Do we want to do it tonight or do we want to save it for Monday?
Why don't we save it till Monday?
All right, we'll save it till Monday.
Because
All
this
right,
one,
folks.
this one. I'll give you just a preview. There have been 10 musicals that have won Best Picture. How many of them can you name? And he has 10 musicals here. And quite frankly, if it were 5 musicals, maybe I'd say yeah, let's do it. But 10 musicals, I can't deal with this.
All right, that's a lot.
Right.
That's a lot. All right, so we'll wait till Monday on that. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description of this podcast. Use the coupon code WINTER2324. If you do, you will get.
10% off.
And we went an hour, and what are we now? Hour and 9 minutes. Not No buffering, no dropping audio. Video's good. No dropped frames, nothing. Everything is fixed. So we will no longer have to deal with, hopefully, God willing, that we no longer will see the circle of death. I even hesitate to say it, but I think the fix that the guy gave me, that the tech guy did for me, has worked.
Let's hope.
All right. Happy Easter to everybody. We'll be back Monday. What's the time for Monday?
Give me 15 seconds here, and
Okay.
I will tell you. Monday is the 1st of April. Monday is April Fool's Day. By the way, I missed out on last night. Yesterday was National Joe Day.
Yes, it was National Show Day, National Joe Day. Didn't get a lot of play on Facebook.
Okay, Joe, the show, I have a talk at 7 p.m., which means the talk would have to be at
8:30.
8:30 would be the show on Monday.
All right, so 8:30 on Monday, folks. So we'll see you Monday night, 8:30 Eastern time.
And
90.
just quickly, 8:30 on Monday, regular time on Tuesday, 8:30 on Wednesday, and that's it. That's the last time we have a weird time for the show, because after that, I have the talk I have on April 4th is at 2 p.m., and that's it for all the library talks on the eclipse. So we'll be back to normal next week on the 4th.
Let's have a great Easter, everybody.
Yes, you too, Joe.
You too, Joe. Nighty night.